Look, every month we come to you guys with...
Yeah, that's
What
the fuck is that?
fuck is happening right now? What's up, guys? Today we are breaking down my 5 go-to baits for the month of September. And this is a really hard one because literally, depending on where you are, almost everything can work. CJ and I kind of walked around the store just now and grabbed the baits that I have the most confidence in. And honestly, I could have chosen 5 from every category. But to try to make this simple and break down whatever nonsense is inside the head, I just kind of went with my 5 go-to strategies for this time of the year. Not necessarily the best offerings, but my favorite things to throw in the month of September. And this is the month of extremes, from top water to the bottom, maybe something in between. So if you want to join me and just hang out, we're gonna talk some tackle. Let's do it. Welcome to the Hookup Tackle. The Hookup Tackle is the world's largest showcase of Megabass products, featuring baits and colors not found at any other dealer. The Hookup also offers a wide display of O.S.P, Evergreen, Deps, Lucky Craft, Jackal, and many more. The Hookup Tackle is owned and operated by family, is staffed by guides and verified tackle nerds who love helping anglers elevate their craft. If you're in the Phoenix area, we'd love to have you stop by our showroom and check out the wonderful world of Megabass and the Hookup for yourself. If you shop online, there are almost 10,000 SKUs of Megabass products alone, with hundreds of other companies and new products being added daily. So next time you're looking for that hard to find bait, that color your fish have never seen before, or maybe you just want to elevate your game, look at thehookuptackle.com. Welcome back, my friends. I am Ben with the Hookup Tackle, the Tackle Otaku on Instagram, being joined this fine day by CJ at Desert Bass on Instagram. What's up, CJ?
How's it going, man?
Good to see you, sir.
Yes, sir.
This is weird for you not to be Jeff. Yeah, I'm just gonna picture you as Jeff.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, it's Jeff back there.
Yeah.
Yeah, but only taller. And you're actually smiling. That's something that Jeff never does.
It's a rare occasion, but when he does, it's genuine.
He is a grumpy sucker, isn't he?
Yeah, sometimes.
Swimbait guys, am I right?
Mm-hmm.
We're the Hookup Tackle USA. Today we are doing basically my 5 favorite baits for the month of September. Now, usually I like to do this episode with Griff. We have no idea where Griff is today. We think he's fishing, but he's not here. So if you were hoping to see some really stupid things that make no sense, you'll have to wait till October. Or maybe we'll have another episode of Griff. But if you want to see some baits that are proven this time of the year, that's basically what we're gonna break down. And we like to do these videos each month because it gives us a chance to just kind of talk through product, right? A little bit more in depth. In a lot of months, it's some of the same things. So you're gonna see, especially this time of the year, as we're still pretty much in summer. It's like 110 today here in Arizona. So I know a lot of you guys are still like, it is summer, right? But a lot of you are starting to transition to fall, and this kind of transition period is gonna happen over the next couple of months. So a lot of the baits that we're using now, we're gonna continue to use in October and November, and maybe even in December, depending on what the weather, the water temp, and the fish behavior is. So let's start right there. Let's start with some fish behavior. September for me is what I like to call the month of extremes, okay? Anytime we go from kind of summer to fall, that's when extremes start to happen in bass behavior. So all summer the water's been hot, right? The metabolism has been super high. It's getting towards the end of summer, so the water at kind of like its peak heat, and the fish are lethargic for a lot of the day, and they're super juiced for small little bursts of the day. They've been spending all summer kind of schooled up and chasing offshore, and then all of a sudden we start getting a couple cool nights and that water temp drops a little bit and extremes start to happen. And this is when the fishing can really become so fun. If you're a tournament angler, all of a sudden it goes from, there's 100 boats on the lake and everybody's fishing the same ledge, to all of a sudden there's 100 boats on the lake and everybody's kind of doing things different, right? You can fish shallow, you can fish deep. It's kind of that month of extreme. And what happens is typically when you're fishing in the summer, most of the bait is kind of offshore. Okay, a lot of that bait is balled up, it's offshore, it's in the deeper water, and all of a sudden you start getting some of those cooler nights and those temps start dropping, and the shad will start to migrate. And a lot of times they'll migrate one direction or the other, right? So let's say they're kind of offshore and they're kind of roaming in that thermocline, that 30, 40 foot, all of a sudden it starts cooling off and that thermocline kind of dissipates and it all becomes kind of one big column. A lot of that bait will go super shallow and a lot of that bait will go super deep. And so the bass follow them. And that's why I say it's kind of the month of extremes, because literally on one cast, you could catch a bass right on the shore and then you can turn around and catch a bass in 60 or 70 feet on the next cast. I mean, it's literally extreme. So this time of the year, I'm really spending a lot of time super shallow or super deep, and I kind of ignore the middle of the column. Now, I'm not ignoring it because there's not fish there. I'm ignoring it mainly because, to me, the funnest way to fish this time of the year is here or here. So, I mean, obviously, if we can catch them shallow, that's the best, because it's usually things like, you know, topwater, hopefully, maybe a swimbait or flipping or something like that. And then down deep, it's usually schooled up fish. You know, I'm not gonna spend my time in 70 feet of water trying to catch one bass, right? But sometimes you get out on a hump or down in a ditch and there's just a school of them down there. If you get on the right school, it can be nonstop for 30, 40, 50 minutes. And this is the time of the year where you could legitimately have a 100 fish day or a 200 fish day. That's the mindset that's going in. Now, a lot of you guys fish smaller lakes. A lot of you guys are fishing urban. A lot of you are fishing ponds, and you're gonna have different behavior than what, say, we might have on a big reservoir. So keep in mind that a lot of this is logistical. The baits are still great baits. We're gonna talk through why they work. I'm gonna show you some alternatives that hopefully will, you know, it's not gonna make sense because that's a big in a lake. I'm gonna show you some alternatives too that might apply to some smaller bodies of water as well. Let's dive in. So in the beginning segment, I was holding up one of these guys. I was holding up a buzzbait. So this time of the year, basically September through November, this is going to be in my top baits. Well, for the next few months, you're gonna see me talk about a buzzbait. And I'll try not to make it super boring so that I'm not repeating a lot of the same information, but a buzzbait is just flat, it's the best thing. And this is the best time of the year to catch them on a buzzbait. Anytime those fish start to migrate from deep to shallow and they get really, really shallow and skinny and they start following that bait back, a buzzbait is really hard to beat. Now, I keep it really, really simple, right? So as far as baits go, Jamaica Boa is usually my starting point. This is a Megabass buzzbait. There's a lot of great ones though. Jackal makes one called the Firecracker that's great. The O.S.P buzzbait's great. Duo Realis has a Realis buzzbait that's great. So all of these can be good options, right? As far as colors go, I usually keep it super simple. A shad color and a dark color. I'll go with like a black or a green pumpkin super early in the morning. Like if I'm out there at first light, sometimes I like to go with a black or a real dark profile just so that they can see it before there's any light penetration in the water. A lot of you guys will fish dirtier water or dingier water, and black or a dark profile can be good even in the middle of the day. But usually once that light starts coming up, I'll transition to more of a shad profile. So a white, a hasu, some kind of just natural bait fish pattern. I keep this very simple. Now, again, do what works for you on your bodies of water. If they smoke chartreuse where you are, then throw chartreuse. If they eat, you know, green or pink or whatever, then obviously throw that. But generally speaking, I find that the easiest thing to do is to keep it simple with a white or a shad pattern. And then if I need to add a little bit of color, I can always just add a trailer. So let's say I needed just a little pop of chartreuse or red or something like that. I could just add a chartreuse twin tail or something like that, or a grub or a swim bait on the back, and I can give myself some color pop, okay? Now, buzzbait is a bait that I want to use when the fish are glued to the bank. This is really where this is key. If you guys are fishing areas where there's lots of grass and maybe you're still fishing more open water but shallow, this can also be a great one for any of those pockets or transition lines. Okay, so if you've got a big grass flat and then it kind of drops down, or maybe you've got matted grass and then it goes from matted grass to, you know, some kind of dip or depression, a buzzbait's also an excellent option in that. It's also a great option in like mixed cover. So if you have some grass and you have some tules and you have some wood and you have some rock and you have a mix of a variety of cover, a buzzbait's also a great option there because it's just a really easy bait to get through most of that cover with a single hook. There's no, you know, trebles really to snag anything that you're coming through. It's just a really good bait option. Now, I'm gonna show you guys something quick and easy that I do almost always. Now, if I'm not taking this super serious, almost always I just take my buzzbait out of the package, tie it on and throw it. It's just kind of the laziness, like let's just take it and go. But if I'm actually being serious, let's say I'm fishing against Griff or something, and I actually need every fish to get in the boat, then there's a quick little mod that I make to every buzzbait. Some buzzbaits will come like this already, so you don't necessarily have to do this with every buzzbait, but most buzzbaits will come in a straight line, okay? And what this does is, remember, this is gonna be right at the water's surface, so this is gonna be sitting right there underneath the surface. Now, most of the time when a bass eat, right, they very rarely are fully attacking it and pushing it out of the water. They're never just coming up and like biting it. They're almost always sucking it, right? That's usually how a bass will eat. It might be a combination of attacking and sucking, but when you have a bait that's just wire and skirt, there's not a lot of body there for the bass to really suck. So that's the advantage of adding some kind of soft plastic trailer. So if you guys are getting a lot of fish that are kind of sucking and you're even seeing your buzzbait go underwater and then it's still going and it never really connects with a fish, it's probably just because there's not enough here for that fish to actually suck it into his mouth. So a lot of times just adding something soft plastic back there, a worm, a split tail, a grub, a swim bait, something that the fish, when it sucks, actually there's some body to it so we can pull it in. A lot of times that solves it. Now, for me, I prefer my buzzbait just like this. I prefer it with just skirt. It allows me to fish it really fast. It allows me to bang it around and not worry about my swim bait sliding or wrapping around the hook or anything weird happening. I can just cast. I never have to recheck anything that's going on down here. That's how I generally like to do it. Now, if I'm going to do that, this is the little mod that I make. I want to tweak this wire just a little bit and sink the head of this buzzbait. Okay, so I take my pliers and I bend that wire down. Okay, so no longer is it straight. All right. Then I'm going to come over here and I'm going to do the same here with the head, and I'm going to bend the head back straight, maybe just slightly more. There we go. Perfect. So the hook and the head are still in the same path that they were right out of the box, only I've sunk the head down about an inch below now where it was originally. So just by adding this little bit of a groove, and it's super easy, it takes just a couple of seconds, what it does is it just lowers that hook and that body in the water a little bit. So when the fish suck, this is actually in the water completely, and it's not kind of skimming at the top. It's basically created a little extra water here between the bait and the top of the water, so that when they suck, it's actually fully underwater and it gets in their mouth way better. You'll notice that your hookup ratio from bite to what you actually hook will go sky high anytime you create that little bit of a groove. And like I said, there's a lot of buzzbaits on the market that will come with that even built in, like the Duo has it built in, the Jackal has it built in, right? So there are some brands that even build it in like that, and you can experiment with how far down you want to drop it, or if you want to drop it at all. Sometimes you may and sometimes you may not. No exact right and wrong to this. This is just a little tweak that helps me get a lot more fish into the boat when this is going. Now, if you guys are fishing just super gnarly conditions and a buzzbait is just driving you nuts, especially with grass, because this time of the year, you know, grass can really be an issue, especially with like dead grass, right? So you're starting to get a lot of that stuff matted up, and you're starting to get a lot of like stringers and just random shit floating everywhere. And a lot of times when you have a lot of grass, a buzzbait can be a horrible option, because the grass will wrap in the blades and it just kind of bogs it down, and then it just kind of spins around. You don't get that great, you know, kind of, you know, spin and churn that you need. If that is you, instead of going with a buzzbait, I'll go with some kind of buzz frog, or some kind of frog that I can fish on the surface, okay? So that would look something like this. It could be a Teckel Sprinkler frog, which would be the traditional way. I brought these just because we don't talk about these that much. This is a brand new one from Teckel called the Kicknocker, more of a wake bait style. And then this is a frog from Megabass called the Batra-X, which has been out for a couple years, but we don't get them in very often. But now that we actually have some, figured it'd be fun to talk about it. In essence, this is going to do the same thing. right? You're gonna fish this the same way, you're gonna cast and wind. So you basically just have a buzzbait, right? Or again, if you're in the Teckel, you could do the same thing with a Sprinker or the Klinker, but basically it's something that you're gonna cast right up to the bank and just retrieve in, and this is just gonna kind of plop, similar to a buzzbait. But this would be a better option if grass is really just driving you nuts and it's clogging up that blade of the buzzbait. So for me, that's number one, buzzbait. And if I absolutely can't throw it because it's just bogging down, then I'll go with some kind of buzz frog or just straight retrieve frog that I'll fish in the same way. All right, let's go to number two. Now, again, it's fall. I want to catch them the way I want to catch them, and this is the time of the year that we can make these decisions, right? If they're not eating the buzzbait, then generally that's because they're not as tight to the bank as I want them to be, and they're still a little bit offshore. They're still in that transition, moving shallow. And so I can usually still catch them on top water. I just have to switch to a walking bait, okay? So, easy enough. This is always tied on my rod from now through November. Some kind of walking bait is on there. My starting point is usually a Teckel Kicknocker. You know, I'll go with either the full size or the pup. I just have a ton of confidence in this. This is also the time of the year that I will add in a Dog X Diamante. Okay, so a lot of guys catch them on the Dog X Diamante year round, and that's awesome. What we find out here is that they will eat this at times when they get super specific to threadfin shad. That seems to be the super trigger to this thing. The rattle system is so much different in the Diamante. It's real high pitch, right? So you got that kind of glassy pitch, whereas the rattle system in a Kicknocker, I think I can afford to open one.
I was waiting for this.
Yeah, okay.
We need to hear some high.
So the Kicknocker, it's got this kind of loud knock. Now it does have some glass feeds in there that you can hear as well. But as it's moving, it's a real loud knock. And the reason I like this bait a lot for open water is because I can move it very quick. I can move it on flat surface or windy chop, or even more importantly for us, boat wake. So boat wake is a huge deal for us up until about Veterans Day, I would say. So all the way through October, especially if we fish on a weekend, there are fucking boats everywhere. You know, there'll be fish popping bait in schooling, and there's wakes going every different direction, right, on a busy weekend. And I can work this through and up and over a boat wake, and it's still gonna walk perfectly. Where a lot of other topwater baits, once you kind of get either the line going on the wake or it starts going up or changing from a wave, it just kind of starts going under the water, and you can get really frustrated. Like, fuck, these boats are driving me insane. But if you use the right bait, it can come up and over and through them, no problem. That's actually what this bait was designed to do. So colors, super simple. I usually throw a white and I throw a clear, right? So this, it could be bone, this is white walker, it could be ghost geisha, it could be any type of solid body shad pattern, and then some kind of clear pattern, okay? When to choose which, I almost always start here. Something solid body, it's the easiest for them to see. It'll call them up. They can see it from 20, 30, 40 feet away, and they can come crush it. If they're shying away from it, or I'm noticing that a lot of the bait that they're popping is super tiny, then I'll stay with a clear bait. It just helps diminish the profile down on this bait quite a bit. And I mean, they absolutely smoke this thing, right? So it could be this, it could be lime ice, it could be vanilla ice, it could be anything, chartreuse shiner. Something that has some transparency to it is what I'm looking for. Solid, transparent, right? Now, on the Dog X Diamante, I'll use this one if I'm seeing that the fish are going for my walking bait, but they're not. I mean, I want them to absolutely crush that fucking thing. I want it walking, and I just want to go boom, and it's like in their throat, and it's T-boned, right? That's what I'm looking for. But if I'm finding that they're kind of just pussies about it, and they're just kind of, you know, and I just see swirls, or maybe they're just like slapping at it, but they're not really fully committing, and there's something about it that's just not drawing the trigger. It could be a million things. This is the importance of not having one topwater bait, or one crankbait, or one worm, right? Because every day can be different, so I want to have some other tools to give them a different offering, to have them react to something different. I have just found that a lot of times this time of the year, this is a great alternative to it. It stays in that bigger profile, but it's a completely different sound, right? So you can hear when I move this, there really is no deep knock, right? The deep knock is gone. Now you have just a high pitch, and you're gonna have a plopping sound from the head as it's moving side to side in the water. So you're gonna get this kind of boom, boom, boom. So you're gonna get the plop without the knock, but then that high pitch sound. And usually anytime you have something real high pitch, that's imitating what we call a shad click, right? So when you get a bunch of shad together and they're all kind of moving around, all of their backs moving around and their bones creaking is creating what's called shad clicks. So if you have like a hydro wave or something like that and you turn it on and it's real fast, like, right? It's usually this kind of sound that it's imitating. It's just shad kind of escaping. There you go. That's my 1-2 punch. Open water when they're not eating the buzzbait or the frog right on the bank. It's really hard to beat a walking bait. So Kicknocker, almost always. Dog Ice Diamante is a backup. That is number 2.
They should come up with a craw click.
Craw click, yeah. All right, so let's go to number 3 now. A lot of you may be wondering why like the evergreen shower blows wasn't on there, or the gunfish from Lucky Craft. Now, CJ and I were talking, this almost could have just been my 5 favorite baits for September, and they were all topwaters. Yeah. Because honestly, most days that's how I want to approach this, right? So, and I will have 5 or 6 different topwaters tied on for different situations, and of course both of those baits would be on there. But when I'm trying to dwindle it down to like literally if I could only take 5 things, what would I take? The reason I'm choosing a Kicknocker or a Diamante over like a shower blows is just for the speed that I'm able to fish. I'm able to cover a lot more water quick. I'm able to fish in open water and move the bait real fast. So it just gives me a speed advantage, right? And that's segmenting into my next option. So let's say I've thrown the buzzbait, I've thrown the walking bait, maybe they're eating it, but they're not eating it as much as I would like, or maybe they've started to lay off it. My next bait of choice is to still stay shallow, that I can fish quick, right? And that is a paddle tail swim bait, okay? Now, this has been my go-to September, October option, I mean, since it was a thing, since, you know, 2010 or whenever this thing was a bait, maybe 2006, maybe, something like that, right? And this is a Reaction Innovation Skinny Dipper. Now, I throw this bait a lot, I talk about this bait a lot. The reason why I love this bait this time of the year is for everything I just said. I can fish it super fast, I can fish it super high in the column, and it's going to draw a reaction strike from those fish that are schooled up and wolf packed up. What you'll find is a lot of times when you have solitary single bass that are set up on structure, a lot of times they make you earn that bite, right? They've set up on this log or this dock post or whatever, and they're not moving that from that spot. So if you want to catch them, you've got to really present that bait perfectly. This time of the year, we get a lot of wolf packs of fish. We get a lot of schools of fish. And a wolf pack would be, you know, 3, 4, 5, 6 fish in a little group. And a lot of times you can use Mother Nature against them, and they might not be super juiced or super active to go chase your swim bait or your topwater. But their instinct is, well, if I don't get it, then that fucker's gonna get it, right? So it's a lot like a bunch of us hanging around and sitting around like, you know, if you don't get, if somebody throws a $100 bill down, it's like, well, I mean, first one to get it gets it, right? So a lot of times that's what's happening, and this is just kind of burning through those fish, and one of those fish needs to go, I'm gonna get it. That's it. And then once that one goes, a lot of times all of them go, and you get the aggression going from all of those fish. Same concept that we talk about with deep cranking or, you know, anything. Once they're schooled, you just got to get something to trigger, and a dipper is a great way to get them to go. Colors, I stay super natural, white, something clear like a money shot violet. Adjust the colors to where you guys are. So if you're fishing, you know, places where it's more bluegill or golden shiner, then go with a green color, right? Or a golden shiner color. So sprayed grass would be good, Houdini would be good. You know, something like that would be a good option. We've done a gazillion videos on this, so I'm not going to waste a lot of time rigging, but this is the stuff you're going to need if you want to get into the skinny dipper. You're going to need a 5/0 owner Twistlock hook. You can go weighted or unweighted. I typically will go unweighted I'll add the weight if I really need to increase speed. But this time of the year, I find I can go just fast enough with this. I always add a red treble stinger to the back. A size 4 is great, so an ST36 or a Gamakatsu, either way is fine. And you can fish this and burn it. Now, the dipper is built to burn, period. You're gonna be covering ground really fast. This is something you can throw all the way across the point, just burn it over a reef or burn it over a bush and draw a reaction strike, okay? Now, if they're just not responding to the burn, let's say they're set up, or maybe their water's a little bit dingier, maybe they're not open water fish, they're set up on structure, whether it's a grass line, a dock, or something, and they're not really willing to commit to a chase, then I'll stay in a swim bait and I'll go with a slower moving paddle tail, and this is one that I use a lot. This is the O.S.P Dolive Shad. Now I brought this out because I want to show you the little mod that I do with this thing, and there's a bunch of different ways you can do this, okay? But these are the pieces that I use. I use the Valley Hill trebling through pipe and a size 4 treble hook. I use the Owner ST36. This is going to allow me to fish a swim bait at a slower pace. Now you could certainly just use like a beast hook or a weighted 5/0 hook or something with this, and you can use it and skip it. But I like this bait for fishing lanes, for fishing, open water, for fishing all the stuff that we've talked about when they just won't react to the burn or the topwater. So here's what we do. We can take this little Valley Hill trebling through pipe, okay? It's basically just a clear hollow tube. It's got some spikes on it. It allows us to turn anything into a hollow body swim bait, or a line through swim bait. I don't know why I said hollow body. Allows us to turn anything into a line through. So I usually just kind of line this up to exactly how I want it. Okay, that looks good. And what I want is I want the line to come out of the bottom. So I'm pushing that through the nose. Okay, I'm gonna push it all the way in. I'm gonna let those barbs kind of grab it. And so that's what you're gonna have. Now, really important that it goes in straight. Make sure it goes in straight. This is a great one to do it on because it's really easy to kind of line it up. And then once it's through, I'll take a pair of scissors and I'll just cut that off right there. So now it's flush, okay? So now, really easy to run our line through. We actually have a tube built in here to the bait. We're gonna run our line through. It's gonna come out the bottom, and we're gonna tie our treble hook to the bottom. So now we've created a line through swim bait, but with a very bite-sized, true to life size offering without having to go to a true like 6-inch or 7-inch or 8-inch big swim bait, right? And those baits are fucking great. Like if I could get bit on an 8-inch line through, of course I'm gonna throw an 8-inch line through, right? But there's a lot of parts of the world where that's just not realistic. And this is gonna get a ton of bites. So this allows me just to fish very fast. This is a color called White Glow. It's virtually the same color as like a Megabass albino pearl shad. Okay, same type of color. So usually, again, I go with something simple like a white, but whatever works in your body of water. If you guys are fishing ponds and it's more bluegill, this would be an amazing thing to throw in like a bluegill color or a green pumpkin, something a little bit darker. This would be a killer thing to throw in a pond or shallow water. And the reason the line through is better for me than like a weighted hook. Anytime you put a weighted hook, that weighted hook is sinking it down, right? And so you have to fish it at a relatively fast clip, which can be good if you want the bait moving fast. But if I want the bait moving fast this time of the year, I'm throwing this, okay? If I want the bait moving slow, but I want to keep it high, I'm throwing this. And we can easily use nail weights to insert in the bait to balance it out or give it more sink if we want it to sink deeper. But typically, just the weight of that treble hook on the bottom is just enough to keep it in that first kind of couple feet of the zone. I can crawl this over cover very slow, through grass. I mean, it's just a really easy bait to keep high in the column. It's unintrusive, there's no sound, it's lifelike. There you go. Number 3 for me is a paddle tail swim bait, whether it's the Dolive Shad, the line through mod, or the skinny dipper. One of those two is making the team almost always. All right, number 4 for me, we're gonna go to the other extreme. Okay, now we're going down to the bottom. So Typically, the buzzbait, the walking bait, the swim bait, I figured out how to catch them shallow if they're shallow. Maybe where you live, we got to add something else like a flip or a pitch or something to where we could really dissect cover, right? But for me, if I've gone through those three things and I'm not getting bit, or a lot of times I'll be getting bit, but I'm always paying attention to my electronics. And this is really, really important. I'm not like a super, dude, one boat will have 12 graphs on it with every tech you can think of. And my other boat will literally just have a little 4-inch screen from 1984, right? So I've got the low-tech rig and the high-tech rig. I'm not necessarily worried so much about the high-tech rig and like panning around, doing all this shit. I'm fishing shallow, all right? I'm there to fish shallow and just go fishing, but paying attention to what's going on wherever my boat is positioned. A lot of times my boat might be in, 40, 50, 60 feet, and I'm throwing across a point, and I look down, all of a sudden there's just craziness going on the graph. I'll just wind my topwater and lay it down, and I'll pick up a spoon and drop it down and just get into an absolute slugfest, right? So paying attention to your surroundings, really, really important this time of the year. When I see stuff happening deep, right, that's when I will drop a spoon. Now, there's two different types of spoons I will drop down. Almost always this time of the year, I'm talking about a jigging spoon, okay? Sometimes I'm talking about a flutter spoon. We'll kind of break down both of these and when I would throw both. Usually for me, when I'm seeing fish in deep water, I want to throw some kind of jigging spoon. The two that I throw most often, this is a drag metal cast from Duo, and this is the Metal X Wavingrider from Megabass. There's 9 million different jigging spoons, right? I don't care which jigging spoon you throw. I like these because they come with everything I need and they allow me to just tie it on and go. It comes with everything I need. It's got a great treble hook on the back. It's got a little stinger hook on the front that you can leave or take off depending on what you want to do. So most of the time I just tie it on like this. What's nice about this is that if they're short striking or hitting it at the front, you can catch them, but you can easily just take that off as well. And then you just have a small spoon. The Metal X Wavingrider is a lot the same. It's just a little bit different profile. So this was built for saltwater, and it was built to look like a little anchovy, but it is super deadly in freshwater as well. And again, it's got everything that you need already built in. So you've got the stinger hook on the top, you've got the great treble hook on the bottom, right? So I can literally just tie it on and go, and I don't have to give any second thought or worry to anything. Now, I would definitely recommend tying to a split ring on a spoon. It's gonna give you a little bit of a pivot, right? So if you're using a jigging spoon that doesn't have anything on the front, just attach a split ring to it, all right? You could use a snap, but I fucking hate snaps for this because you're gonna snag a lot and it's gonna weaken your snap a lot. So I would definitely recommend a split ring, okay? What I love about a jigging spoon is they fast sink, or they sink fast, right? So I'm using like a 3/4 or 1 ounce here all the time. This is a 20 gram, this is a 30 gram, right? So essentially a 3/4 or 1 ounce. I can literally see fish in 60 feet. I can drop it, cast it right there and just open my bail, and this thing will be in 60 feet in, 50 seconds or so. Whereas if I try to do that with a flutter spoon, it'll be like 25 minutes later, yep. Right? So I can get this right to the fish that I'm seeing down there on the bottom super fast. I basically let it get to the bottom, and I'm essentially just kind of ripping it and then letting it fall back down on a semi-slack line, okay? A couple twitches up and letting it fall back down. And what I'm trying to do is, if this is on the bottom, when I jerk up, this is going to rip up, and then as it falls, it's going to have this real kind of fast flutter, right? And lay on the bottom, and it's gonna rip and then fast flutter down. And what I'm trying to do is, if there's a bass down there in the bottom and they're kind of like looking around for food and they're in the school, and all of a sudden like this thing like rips, and then all of a sudden it falls really close by their face, it falls so fast that they either react to it by eating it or they react to it by getting out of the way, right? But hopefully you get one to react to it by eating it, because it fell right in front of his face and it ate it, and you feel it boonk, and then you wind in, you hook them, and then you're off to the races. Usually if you can hook one out of the school, you'll get a lot of activity out of that school until the school dissipates or moves on, or you lose them, or whatever happens, right? So jigging spoon is always tied on this time of the year, solely in case I see them on the graph while I'm fishing shallow. Now, Sometimes you'll see them on the graph, and instead of them being right on the bottom, you'll see them kind of off the bottom, and you can tell that they're feeding on bigger fish. Gizzard shad, crappie, you know, something else is in the column, and that's when I'll go to a Flutter spoon. Tons of Flutter spoons on the market. This is just one that, this is kind of like an Edo Vision 110 for me. Like once you throw this one, it's really hard to throw something else. This is the Deps Gurkha knife. Now, crazy expensive. I mean, it's expensive, just how it is, right?
Unless
it comes, what?
Unless you're Griff.
Unless you're Griff, yeah, then who cares?
Then he owns
right?
every option on the market.
So the Gurkha knife comes with no hardware. So you have to add your own hooks. Now you can do different things. This is the hardware that I usually do now. These come in 2 different sizes, okay? I like the big size. There's a junior size and a big size. I like the big size, and here's why I like throwing the Gurkha knife over, say, something like a traditional Flutter spoon. When you throw this thing, you can feel it throbbing. So when this thing is falling in the water, it is literally kicking so far and so hard, and it has this like distinct kick at the end, right? So it's kind of going boom, boom, right? And you feel it in your rod as it's sinking. You can feel it going boom, 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 bottom, right? Rip, fall, boom, boom, boom. Like you can feel everything that it's doing. When you lose your 2 or 3 Gurkha knives that you had, and you got to go back to a traditional Flutter spoon, you throw it out there, you're like, what the fuck, does it even do anything? Like, you've totally been ruined by all the transmission that you have on this. If you're line fouls, anything that happens, it's just transmitting everything so well. That's why I love this spoon. When I rig this, I will use these hooks. This is by Owner. You can use any kind you want, but these are the ones I use, the Owner Dual Dancing Stingers, okay? I usually put a 1/0 on the top and a 2/0 on the bottom, okay? I find that when you get bit on these hooks, dude, you never lose them. Knock on wood.
Yeah, there you go.
You never lose them, right? Now, if you are going to rig top and bottom, make sure when you rig this top, you see how it's got this little groove on the inside, right? So it's kind of a triangle. The inside is grooved. Make sure you rig it so that that hook lays on the inside of that groove. Okay, if you go on the outside, what happens when you throw it, it will wrap up your line, and you're gonna get, your hooks are just gonna be up on the line. It's just kind of retarded, right? So, inside of the groove, on the bottom, go for it. Try not to fish it around trees because these are super snaggy on wood as well. So rock is super easy to get out of, trees not as easy. Anytime they're on bigger bait, this is a great option. Small bait or deep water, jigging spoon, bigger bait or more kind of suspended a little bit, I'll go with the Flutter spoon. There's number 4 for me. All right, and then finally, number 5 for me. Dude, I don't see any reason unless, I mean, if you're tournament fishing, you gotta do whatever you gotta do, all right? If you're fun fishing, I don't see any reason why you can't just throw reaction the entire time. I'm staying deep, I'm just gonna go reaction deep, and I'll throw a big heavy swim jig. So the 2 that I love the Megabass Uoze in a 3/4 ounce, and I love the O.S.P Weed Rider, again, in a 3/4 ounce. So I'll go with the heaviest swim jig I can get. 3/4 Dirty Jigs makes a great one as well. California swim jig, that would be another killer option. So whatever swim jig you like, I just like to go to a bigger size, like a true 3/4 ounce size. This will allow me to basically fish that swim bait that I was talking about earlier, but down deep. I can fish it quick along the bottom. I can hop it down there, and I can put this in places just like we were putting the spoon, where the spoon is like super reactive and just moving real fast and just trying to get something to strike. This is something I can fish a little bit slower and more natural down where I know they are. So if I know that there's a bend in a creek channel, or I know there's a log laying against a rock pile, and I know there's a specific lane that they're gonna be set up in, the big swim jig lets me present a bait perfectly right where they are. Right now, I'm gonna use the same trailer that I was using before on the line through, right? So we're gonna go back to this Dolive Shad. Again, whatever you like to use, if you're a K-Tech guy or whatever, go for it. I would recommend this time of the year that you go with a paddle tail that's going to be a little bit faster moving, a little tighter and faster, right? So, I love the Megabass Spark Shad, one of my favorite swim baits. But I usually don't pull the Spark Shad out until the water starts cooling off a little bit, because it's a little bit wider, a little bit harder vibration, a little bit slower. And so I like that when the water cools. While the water's still pretty hot, I generally go with the O.S.P. So you can see this is Smoke Shad from Megabass, this is White Glow from O.S.P. It's kind of a perfect match. But again, whatever color combo works for you guys. Now, if you're fishing from shore, maybe you're fishing from a pond or an urban lake, and deep water for you might be 15 feet, right? Or it might be 10 feet. Then obviously don't go to a 3/4 ounce. I mean, you could, but you could probably do the same idea with a 1/2 ounce. I'm doing 3/4 because, again, deep water for me is going to be, you know, 40, 50, 60 feet, 70 feet. So I usually like to trim my skirt of my jig a little bit. On the swim jig, I usually like my skirt to be just behind the hook here, okay? So I'll usually come in here with my scissors. This is almost always easier to do before your swim bait is on it, but you know, I don't think it's super critical that it's exactly right. So as long as you get it kind of close, it's okay if you got some strands hidden here and there. But what that does is by trimming that just a little bit, it allows you to fish the bait a little bit quicker and allows it to track truer. So the more drag you have on your swim jig, right, the more that's pulling behind it, the more it has a tendency to roll or lift to a side. The less drag you have and the quicker that water can kind of fall off that skirt and get to your paddle tail, the truer that bait's gonna track at all speeds. So I like to just shorten it up just a little bit. It's got the heavy head, that paddle tail will keep it going. And now I've just got this really nice, beautiful profile swim bait that I can fish like a jig. You could certainly do the same thing with a football jig. And we even talked about, do we do a football jig or a swim jig? A football jig could certainly be a player here, especially if your fish are still keyed in on crawfish. I prefer to fish reaction when I can, just fish a little bit quicker in the column. Typically I find in September that the fish really, your biggest fish, are super keyed on bait. I want something that's more bait fish oriented versus crawfish oriented most of the time. Not all the time, but most of the time. So there you go. Number 5 for me is a big heavy jig that I can fish down deep. All right, guys, that is a wrap. There's a look at 5 baits that will be tied on every time I go fishing this month. And I know if you guys implement some of them or all of them into your lineup, you'll definitely catch a lot more fish on these baits. If you have questions on anything we covered, any of the mods, any alterations, or just any questions at all, drop it down below in the comments and I will definitely get to it. CJ will put links to everything we covered, so if you guys want to, you know, check any of them out, maybe something new that you haven't seen or utilized before, links will be in the description for you guys. CJ, thank you for hanging.
Of course.
Good.
Thank you.
Good to be here with you, sir.
Mm-hmm.
So much better than Jeff. You smiled the whole time. So thank you for making me feel so warm and like I was actually doing something right.
It's good information.
Yeah, thank you so much. Guys, on behalf of myself and CJ, Griff and Jeff, wherever the hell they are, and everybody else here at the Hookup Guys, thank you for your support. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your business. And we will see you again soon. Peace out, my friends.